late, but welcome. Good morning, good day, good evening, wherever you are. I have mostly started setting up. I think I still need to change the images on the left side. Let me check. And see if I can find the right one. Stream 2, yes. And there we go. All right, top left, you can see the commander we are currently talking about. Underneath, you can see all the commanders that we are going to talk about, at least like the upcoming ones, and then I need to scroll down, and the time we needed for that section. The general idea of the stream is that I do my research for the mainline videos of, well, exactly what it says up here, the most interesting commanders. A series I started quite a while ago, and yeah, now I do my research on stream. This has a few benefits. First of all, I have a time and a place to do so. And then second of all, I get lots of good suggestions sometimes whenever people are active in chat, and that's very nice. Yesterday, to give a quick summary, we started with Agros Kos, a legendary that copies abilities, and not spells, but specifically abilities that target only itself to your other creatures. And we have a nice bow to the very last commander on this list. Aisha of Sparks and Smokes, which can cheat sorcery spells from your hand into play, or like you cast them for free if you manage to hit opponents with her. Ajani is a cat tribal commander, also a planeswalker, also a flip card that you need to enable by sacrificing cats, so a bit of a sacrifice sub-theme. Alibu is a 5-mana 4/5 that gives other artifact creatures you control haste, but not only does it care about artifact creatures, it also cares about tapped artifacts in general. Anim Pakal tries to go tall and wide at the same time. It itself wants a bunch of +1/+1 counters, whilst creating an army of gnomes that you can use in your go wide endeavors. Astor, Bearer of Blades, is one of many equipment commanders that we have in Boros. In his case, though, it also doubles as a vehicle commander, which means he occupies a slightly different space. You can see the cards that we added are like Colossal Plow next to Colossus Hammer. So yeah, he can do both. Cassandra Battle Seraph, I pretty much put in the list because I think it looks sick, and then we tried to find cards that make it work. It ended up being like a bit of a pillow fort strategy, very interesting. Cassandra forbids players from casting spells during combat, you included, but she does not disable abilities from being activated, so that was interesting. Bree of Clan Stout Arm gives things flying and lifelink temporarily, and she also has a static ability that rewards you for gaining a bunch of life. We paired this with the usual soul siblings and big beefy guys that you can give flying and lifelink to, like Malignus, which sounds like a setup for a joke. Brian Stoutham, I believe this to be a relative of Bree, maybe her degenerate uncle, also cares about big beefy stuff. You can pretty much fling stuff at opponents' faces, sacrifice a creature, deal damage equal to its power. You could either do ball lightning type creatures that have extremely high attack stats for their mana cost, or Phyrexian Soul Gorger, these cards that are terrible if they stay in play, like they have a huge downside, but you just sacrifice them immediately. Power doublers, big creatures like Malignus also work here. Chainsaw, remarkable because it makes every creature strong that you sacrifice. Branor Battle Hammer is one that made us question if Boros is maybe a bit too pigeonholed into equipments, because it also works very well with the Colossus Hammer type cards of this world, but it also has a static ability of giving every creature for each equipment +2/+0, and we found a few sweet payoffs, most notably Bludgeon Brawl, which turns each non-creature, non-equipment artifact into an equipment. very nice to make use of this first paragraph. Cadric Soul Kindler was where we originally wanted to stop yesterday. It has this awesome line of text of the legend rule doesn't apply to tokens you control, which means you can create a lot of tokens of the strongest creatures that Magic has to offer in those juicy legendaries like Nayali or Adeline or you name it. We included cards like Orthian, who himself is a legendary creature, but also makes copies of legendary creatures. We made use of the myriad mechanic of stuff like Populate, the mechanic, and my favorite pet card, Sundial of the Infinite. We did an extra round, an encore if you want, and that was Duke Older Ravenguard, a 6-mana 5/5 that at beginning of combat on your turn gives another target creature you control haste in Myriad. Haste, of course, already very powerful, and then Myriad means you get a copy for each player that creature isn't attacking, or each opponent that creature isn't attacking, whenever the creature attacks. We paired this with high-value ETBs. Very notably, attack triggers don't work because the creature enters a tapping with Myriad. Sundial works here as well, although slightly different. And a nice viewer suggestion, Mandate of Peace, 2 mana, cast a spell only during combat, end the combat phase, exile all spells and abilities from the stack. So whenever you would sacrifice the Myriad tokens, which happens at the end of combat, you can play Mandate of Peace. These two both belong to Brian Stoutarm, I believe. BR. Let's see if that was correct. No, it's the other way around. That's fine. Today, as you can see, we start this list off with Eartha Yo, whatever, Frontier Mentor. Let's add one to the... Sorry, let's add one. And then move one back to the sideboard. So we have a concise list down here. Give it the tag it deserves, ER, and let's go through it. While also starting the timer on the left. Eartho, Core Advisor. When it enters, create a 1/1 red mercenary creature token with tap. Target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. Whenever you activate an ability that targets a creature or a player, copy that ability. You may choose new targets for the copy. It is nice that we start here, because, again, it ties back into the very first command that we talked about. Once I finish pouring my tea, let's go back real quick. Or actually, he's down here. Agris Kos also copies abilities. So let's first talk about what separates them. Agris Kos, at first glance, might seem a lot more powerful because it can copy the ability to each other creature you control. If we take the mercenary as an example that Eartha creates, if you target Eartha with the mercenary token, giving it +1/+0, then you get to copy that ability once. Were you to target Agris Kos, you would get to copy that ability X times, whereas X is the amount of creatures that you control currently. What is very important to note here, though, is that Eartha Joe can copy abilities to target players. And the very first ability that came to my mind, because I'm enslaved to this kind of card, is Mindslaver, which we can give a good read once we change the artwork, which is horrible. Let's go for the OG Mirrodin one. Mindslaver, 6 mana, 4 and tap, sacrifice Mindslaver. You control target player's next turn. This effect is beloved by everyone who activates it, and very much hated by everyone who's on the receiving end. Usually that means you make one enemy. If you have Eartha Joe, you can target 2 players with this, copying the Mindslaver effect and controlling 2 next players. Maybe you find another effect that copies an activated ability. There's a lot of cards like this. And you can control the entire table for a round. I think that is already good enough for me to like present this commander as something interesting. Because remember, the goal is turning this research into a video where we talk about interesting commanders and the fun things you can do with them. Let's see. I'm gonna add real quick, just for the future, the live stream chat at the top of my OBS. So yeah, that's good. Let's look for more cards, by the way, that copy abilities. Simply put, copy ability. And let's leave it open whether it's abilities or ability. Only 31 results, that's pretty good. Agriskos, I believe we can leave out. I'm gonna give it a quick mention, but it doesn't need a specific slot in a video, so to speak. Copy target activated or triggered ability you control from a colorless source. This could go very well with the mention of Mindslaver. Just control all 3 players during their next turn. I think that's like the biggest power move I would have ever seen in Commander. Like, yes, you guys sit down to play with me. Yes, we agreed this is a multiplayer game, but what if I play all of your decks and you get to just sit back, relax, and drink a cup of tea? Or more realistically, at least in my game store, some energy drink. This cares about Chandra Planeswalkers. Illusionist Braces whenever an activated ability of equipped creature is activated. Stuff like this is very good. What are the best activated abilities that we can think of? Excuse me. The best activated abilities. We have take control of someone. For sure, there's like take an extra turn, right? Extra turn. And to signify that this is an activated ability, let's put in quotation marks the extra dots. Okay, like Magistrate's Scepter. Remove 3 charge counters from Magistrate's Scepter. Take an extra turn after this one. This doesn't target, though, right? Yeah, so unfortunately, this one doesn't work. So actually, no. If we read the commander again, it very clearly states that only if a player gets targeted. Yeah, whenever you activate an ability that targets a creature or planeswalker, copy that ability. We can still talk about like Duke Older Raven Guard. I believe giving 2 creatures haste and Myriad is still good enough. And then, I guess this one is so open-ended that for a small like time frame like this, I would look at EDH Rec to get a first idea. I believe yesterday we already had pretty good activated abilities, but I'm trying to find new stuff here. We can talk about Jax as the troublemaker. She fits into other cards as like commander decks as well that users could make use of. 4 mana, or like viewers, 4 mana, 2/3, 1 red, tap, discard a card, create a token that's a copy of another target creature you control. It gains haste and sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. It's very nice to get to copy something like this. They seem to very much like this interaction. Soulbright Flamekin. 2 mana, target creature gains trample. If this is the 3rd time this ability has resolved this turn, add 1,000,000 mana to your mana pool. This interaction is good enough for me to to include. This is not infinite mana. Please note that it really only triggers the 3rd time. So the 4th time, the 5th time, the 6th time it doesn't trigger. But Soulbright Flamekin can, for just 4 mana, create 8 mana. If my quick maths is right, or quick counting, 2, 4, 6, 8. Yeah. So you activate this twice, and since this Eartha's ability isn't restricted to once a turn, you do this once, and it counts as 2, and then the 2nd time you activate this, it would count as 3 and 4. Isn't there a new... I should have it somewhere near my desk. There was a new elemental in Loben Eclipse that's somewhat the same, but it might be that you can only use the mana to play elemental spells or activate abilities. Is it the other? Let's look for the other Soulbright card. It might be just a callback. Yep. Target creature you control gains trample. If this is the 3rd time, gain 4 mana. So for 2, you would gain 4, which is quite similar. Although admittedly, like this, yes, it looks like a 1-drop, but it costs 3 mana in most decks, unless you're a dedicated elemental tribal. Whereas this is just way more flexible. Here we have stuff like Humble Defector. Drawing you 4 cards. Yeah. That's like very obviously very good. By the way, if you're curious, I believe the interaction works like this. You tap this, you draw 2 cards, and target opponent gains control of Humble Defector. The copied ability, you still draw 2 cards, but you cannot choose a new opponent to gain control of Humble Defector. I believe that is how it works. At least I know that you cannot sacrifice cards that you do not control. There's a very recent debate in Modern about stealing a creature that has a sacrifice trigger on the stack. And I believe it should work the same way. It's a bit of a rules kerfuffle, though. Maybe we find one more like exciting example of something that targets a player. Yes, this targets a player, but it's too good to be exciting, in a weird way. Destroy target creature with power 4 or greater. That's meh. Target opponent exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile an instant or sorcery card. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Okay, that is the stuff that I think makes a lot of sense. Not super exciting, though. Might be the best that we can find here. Let's look at the utility artifacts and see if some big payoff comes to mind, because we want to find the thing that gets people into building decks around this commander. Lithoform engine, I think I will include. Lithoform engine instead of the abstruse archaic. They do similar things. This one is a bit more flexible, but more importantly, most people will have to read abstruse archaic in a video. Lithoform engine, most people will have seen at some point. If you haven't, it just copies an activated or triggered ability. It can also copy instant or sorceries or even permanents. It is just more flexible. Thus, the rate is a little worse than for the card we just removed. But in terms of thinking of a video, it's important that it's a somewhat recognizable card. Okay. Well, people aren't super into targeting players. If we type in target player. And then we do order by mana value and direction descending. Maybe we can find some big stuff. Well, I guess. Gain control of target opponent during that player's next turn. But we kind of have that covered. Target player's life total becomes 20 is funny. 9 mana, it's a terrible card. Ulamog. It enters for each opponent. No. Double target player's life. And then we're already kind of in the meh scenarios, but we could talk about stuff like Combustible Gearhulk. When it enters, target opponent may have you draw 3 cards. If that player doesn't, you mill 3 cards. Then this creature deals damage to that player equal to the total mana value of those cards you just milled. Interesting because you can potentially draw 6 cards. I'm gonna add it. It's not the best card. I'm not convinced that giving your opponents a choice, even in Commander, is super good. Oftentimes you're just gonna get the worst of the 2 options, but that's fine. Again, this serves as an example of... Oh, actually, we're completely off whenever you activate an ability. So, Duke, you're out. Combustible Gearhulk, you're out. This is activated, this is activated, this is activated. These are activated. So those are still fine. And then we can mention Orthion as well, because Orthion taps to create a token that's a copy of another target creature. The way I'm going to do this is like, I'm going to move this first. I'm going to be like, yes, a card that we've already talked about, Orthion, works great with Eartha Joe. Let's keep it at that for now. Feather is just in here, so I remember to delete her. Let's add one, move one to the sideboard, and give the GE, the General Ferrus Rockerick, a tag. It is a 3-mana 3/1 human soldier, and it has hexproof from monocolored. Whenever you cast a multicolored spell, create a 4/4 red and white golem artifact creature token. This first line of text, hexproof from monocolored, is pretty nice already. A lot of the good removal spells, when you think about it, or like the most premium removal spells, are monocolored. It is Chaos Warp, it's Beast Within, it's Swords to Plowshares. Let me actually like get them all in. Beast Within. Oh yeah. Like Beast Within. Chaos Warp. And Swords to Plowshares. All of these very obviously monocolored cards. Next, we can talk about like just good white and red creatures. Just to go like, hey, there's a plethora of excellent white, red creatures, and let's look for... I hate that there's no rarity, by the way. I can add it here. Let's see if we quickly find like a good, maybe even non-legendary creature. Yeah, Balefire Liege. Other red creatures get +1/+1. Other white creatures get +1/+1. Red spell, deal 3 damage to a player. White spell, gain 3 life. Stuff like this. This is not even like a particularly good card. Blade Historian, attacking creatures you control have double strike. There is a bunch of good creatures here. We can then differentiate between... Oh, actually, these are both not the examples I'm looking for. Let's go to considering. because for sure there's some good cards in here that I can take. Let's see. We also care about artifact creatures. Is there something we can take here? Okay, let's take Tori. Move to the main deck. And set this as an example of, hey, this is a white and red creature. You pay red mana pips, you pay white mana pips, right? This is like the base form of a white-red creature. It's good with attacking, and the tokens you create are red and white, so it benefits off of all of these effects. But then, luckily, because red, red, white could be a bit difficult to cast, we have cards like Blade Historian, which is a white and red creature, but really you can play this for white pips, for red pips. You won't ever run into any issues when it comes to your mana base, unless you are crazy enough to run colorless lands, which admittedly a lot of people do. Oh, oops, by the way. Next commander. Yeah, like people kind of overvalue some utility lands in my opinion, but that's a different story. My beef with Reliquary Tower will never end. Then we can talk about stuff like Justice Strike, I believe it is. I just bought one for this is not the one I'm looking for. Let's see. Instants, of course, are very good here. Instant speed, create a token that can block, that can either chump or kill block something. What we're looking for is split. And let's say color white red equals white red. Yeah, we have stuff like integrity. 1 mana, target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. This effect itself, quite innocuous, not very good. But if we attach a 4/4 creature to it, suddenly becomes better. Few spells also work. You may cast, like the sides are, of course, red and white specifically, but fuse is a weird mechanic where you can pay the cost of both sides, and then you get to cast both sides. But if we go to the rules text, let's see. When resolving a fused split spell with multiple targets, nope, that's not what we want. Some split cards with fuse have 2 monocolor halves of different colors. If such a card is cast as a fused split spell, the resulting spell is multicolored. If only one half is cast, of course the spell is only the color of that half. While not on the stack, such a card is multicolored. So yeah, wear and tear in your hand is multicolored. Wear, if you cast it, is just mono red. Tear, if you cast it, is just mono white. If you cast wear and tear on the stack, it is a multicolored card and thus triggers your commander. It's nice that this is just a good card that we get to talk about. That is like the very basic, I guess like we don't need all of these. These are different examples, right? Integrity is multicolored, this is multicolored, but this is not super obvious to the viewer. So there might be a benefit in us mentioning it. Can we do something with the Golem artifact creature tokens? Golem has become more and more of a sub-theme. So if we look at some cards here. We will see Blade Splicer, a 3-mana 1/1. When it enters, we get a golem. It's a different type of golem, but the second line doesn't discriminate. Golems you control have first strike. This will also count for the 4/4 white and red golems you control, of course. We have other golem synergies for sure. Golems you control have indestructible. We can talk about like 2 nice cards that make use of the golems itself. I don't think we need much more here. Unless there's a nice pet card. This creates 4/4 colorless golems, and I love this card. But I think like we'll leave it up to the viewer to decide if they want to go deeper into the golem route. Or can I? Probably not. General Rockrick, do you have more secrets that we can uncover whenever you cast a multicolored spell? It doesn't say copy, so that's not a direction we can go. 4/4 red and white golem artifact creature token. Yes, populate again, but I think for now that's it. I think we have enough interesting facts to talk about, like the difference between a white and red creature that has actual normal mana cost, the split mana costs, the fact that a lot of the good removal is single color and thus cannot target General Ferris. And yes, the instants that are super cheap and trigger him and become a whole lot better because for 1 mana getting a 4/4 token is quite good. And the fact that fuse cards have the attributes of both sides if you fuse them. Plus, golems is a sub-theme. Hoffrey Ghostforge. Let's add 1. Let's move 1 to the main deck. And let's, for once, on time. Not quite. No, actually, we're on time. Move to the next commander and give it its tag. HO. What a hoe. 5 mana, 4/5. Dwarf Cleric. Spirits you control get +1/+1 and have trample and haste. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, exile it. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's a spirit in addition to its other types, and it has, when this creature leaves the battlefield, return the exiled card to your graveyard. Okay. We have this out, and whenever a creature dies, we exile it. If we do, create a token that's a copy of that creature. What is the exact wording on escape cards like Flage? When Flage enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless it is escaped. So this is not something that works. This guy makes it enter, but without being escaped. You're out. But we've had a lot of cards that say create token, copy, sacrifice. We might just go back to Orthian. Might choose Calamity. Might choose this guy. Let's say we create a copy of a creature. Non-legendary, of course. We discard a card, we create a token that's a copy of a creature we control. It gains haste, and then it dies. Oh. Reading the card explains the card. We care about non-token. So what we do is stuff that says sacrifice, and then activated ability. Sacrifice this, and then type, of course, creature. Goodness. Creature. Let's see if we can find good creatures that sacrifice themselves. So yes, there's a bunch, but I'm sure just with a quick glance, we'll find stuff like Alseid of Life's Bounty, 1 mana, 1/1. Sacrifice it, target creature or enchantment you control gains protection until end of turn from a color of your choice. This should be very nice. Let's find one more example, or like Benevolent Bodyguard. Kind of does the exact same. Do we find something? We could do like stuff like Catalyst Elemental. Also seems very, very good. Okay. So what we found here is this guy. Whenever a creature dies, you exile it, you create a token copy. Once that token copy leaves the battlefield, we get the whatever we exiled back into the graveyard. Cards like Benevolent Bodyguard and Alseid thus get a huge upgrade because these creatures are meant to be sacrificed to protect, let's say, your commander. And if it is out already, you get 2 copies. Catalyst Elemental is also a creature meant to be sacrificed, not to protect your commander, but instead to give you temporary mana, in this case 2 mana. We can also talk about good ETBs. So let's say stuff like, let's say my pet card Sun Titan. Sun Titan is just a good creature. If we look at the cards we just added, Alseid of Life's Bounty, Benevolent Bodyguard, Catalyst Elemental, they all cost 3 or less mana. Sun Titan 6 mana, Vigilant 6/6. When it enters, return target permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. It targets all of these, it gets all of them back, so it is a high value kill target. If Hofri is out and you kill Sun Titan, well, Sun Titan goes away, you get a token copy of Sun Titan that does exactly the same. What you're looking for here is attack and enters and attack triggers, which got a previous mention for a card that should be in here but isn't anymore, the Archduke. Where's my Archduke, by the way? Add 1 and move 1 to the main deck. So I guess it's going to be a bit of a repeat here, but if we take a look, let's say we can again mention Sigarda's Vanguard, 5 mana, 3/3, flash flying. When it enters or attacks, choose any number of target creatures with different powers. Those creatures gain double strike until end of turn. But we're going to find a different example just for variety's sake. Enters or attacks. And let's find some good, nice payoffs. Warrior against double strike is okay. When this enters or attacks, exile the top X cards of your library, or access big creatures. Fear of missing out, yes. Could be an Overlord. When the Overlords enter or attack, they do something interesting. But everybody's kind of sick of the Overlords. Sun Titan might be one of the better ones. But how about Tersa Lightshatter? She kind of works really nicely here. Tersa, pretty new from Dragons, not Dragons of Tarkir, from the latest Tarkir set, Tarkir Dragonstorm, right? 3 mana, 3/3 haste. When it enters, discard up to 2 cards, then draw that many cards. So she serves as like a loot creature. A loot on a stick, pretty much. Then whenever it attacks, if there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard, exile a card at random. You may play that card this turn. if we look at the synergies we've built so far, with creatures that sacrifice themselves, they will often be in a graveyard, so you will be able to cast them again for cheap because, well, all of these are pretty cheap. Spirits you control have +1/+1 and trample and haste. This is just, in my opinion, a nice bonus. All of these cards that you're exiling gain haste, which makes stuff like Sun Titan so much better. We could look at sacrifice outlets, because sometimes you are going to play a Sun Titan, but you'd much rather have a Sun Titan that has haste. So you spend 6 mana, you play your Sun Titan, but then you sacrifice the Sun Titan to Goblin Bombardment. Sun Titan goes to the graveyard, you get a spirit that is an exact copy of Sun Titan, and et voila. Not only do you get a second ETB trigger from Sun Titan, but you also get to attack immediately. That could be pretty cool. That's something nice to mention. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, exile it. We have a bunch of Leaves Graveyard triggers, because the creature first goes to the graveyard. Does it go to a graveyard? Let's read the rules text here. The token copy is exactly what was printed on the original creature and nothing else. If you can't exile the card, perhaps because another effect moved the card before the triggered ability started resolving, you won't create a token. So I believe the creatures don't go to the graveyard. As the creature dies, you exile it, not when it is placed in your graveyard. No, not as it existed in a graveyard before it was exiled. Okay, no, so die means go to the graveyard. Let's look at stuff that triggers off of Leave Graveyard. "20 results. I'm thinking of stuff like Desecrated Tomb, but obviously Desecrated Tomb is not the best card. 3 mana, when one or more creature cards leave your battlefield, create a 1/1 black bat creature token with flying. That means in addition to gaining a spirit token, you also get Desecrated Tomb triggers in the form of 1/1 black bats. Is there something else we can do? Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, create a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. I mean, that's pretty good. We can also look deeper into Spirit Tribal, by the way. This will serve as an example of leave graveyard triggers. And then let's just look for the word spirit. Oftentimes, of course, you just create spirit tokens, but there might be some Spirit Tribal cards in here as well. Let's see. All of this creates 1/1 spirits. We are looking at payoffs. I don't know why so many cards in here are Italian at the moment. This didn't used to be the case. Now I feel like every search I have an Italian card in here. All spirits have, when this creature comes into play, you may have it deal 3 damage to target non-spirit creature. All non-spirit creatures have, when this creature comes into play, you may have it deal 3 damage to target spirit. That's an interesting card that we can talk about. It might be pretty bad, because everybody can target your stuff, and you will... I mean, you will also be able to target all of their stuff pretty much. It's a cool card, so it's worth mentioning, even though it might not be the best. Spirit payoffs. Whenever any non-token creatures put into a graveyard, put a spirit token onto the battlefield. Too expensive for 4 mana. Lovely artwork, by the way. Goated artists, Richard Kane Ferguson, by the way. We don't seem to, at least immediately, get a lot of spirit payoffs. A lot of the I know that there is spirit payoffs, but they're mostly centered around blue as a color. Blue-white has a bunch of commanders that care about spirits. There is the Kamigawa stuff here, but whenever you play a spirit or arcane spell, of course, doesn't work quite as nicely with what our commander is doing. Spirit creatures you control get +1/+1. It's just not a desirable effect for 3 mana. So for each permanent you control. There's a lot of spirit hate. I see. But not all that much love for my fellow ghostly friends. It's interesting that we've shifted to 3/2 spirits in red and white. It's a little weird. But 3/2. I'm thinking if there's something that we can do with the 3/2 tokens, but probably not. Sacrifice a spirit, target non-spirit creature gains indestructible until end of turn. Isn't that perfect to protect our commander? All of these spirits that he will summon, he will then use to protect himself. Or, I mean, maybe the spirits do it for free. Who knows? I think that's good enough. Oh, the Staff of the Storyteller for sure is just a card that should get repeated mentions. I'm not sure if this card is on everybody's radar, but it should be. So let's go back. Let's recap what we have found so far. Let's try to get it in order. Hofri Ghost Forge, 5 mana. You know the drill, I've read the card by now 3 times. First idea was to pair it with creatures that sacrifice themselves, because you get another copy of that card once you sacrifice the first one. The second step was to then include cards that are just high value targets. They often get killed because people need to get rid of them, otherwise to take over the game. If they try to kill it, you get a token copy of them. Nice upside if they have an ETB and an attack trigger, because, ETB is obvious. The attack trigger is particularly nice because spirits you control have haste. And that brings us to the next step we took, which was cards like Goblin Bombardment, which sacrifice a creature. Let's say someone targets your Sun Titan. You play Sun Titan. Somebody tries to exile your Sun Titan. Exiling, of course, sucks for you because Hofri doesn't trigger. Instead, you sacrifice it to Goblin Bombardment. You get your token copy, get another ETB, and then the Sun Titan copy is a spirit, which means it gets haste from Hofri. Next, we looked into creature or for triggers of cards whenever. Sorry. Next, we looked for cards that say whenever a card leaves your graveyard, do something. Quintorius Field Historian came up and it bridges the gap nicely. It gives spirits +1/+0, but it also creates spirits. We also looked at these spirit payoffs as in Clash of Realities, which makes it so whenever one of your spirits enters, you can deal 3 damage to target non-spirit. And cards like Spirit Bonds, which makes use of the spirits you create, because it enables you to sacrifice them to give mostly your commander indestructible. And then let's harp on about just a very generically good card in every token deck ever. 2 mana, Staff of Storytellers. When it enters, create a spirit. Whenever you create 1 or more creature tokens, put a story counter on this card, and remove a story counter to draw a card. Who's next? Kellen the Fey-Blooded. Kellen the Fey-Blooded is a card. I keep doing this in the wrong order, by the way. Move on to the sideboard. KE is a card that got a mention already in one of my... Well, if we are doing research for the mainline videos, then let's call them the side quest videos, where I talked about a concept that had been fascinating me for a while now. Mainly, or specifically, hidden commanders. Hidden commanders refers to the concept of you playing a card in your command zone that is not the card that you built your deck around. Instead, the real star of the show is hidden in the 99. Oftentimes, and for good reason, this is paired with a commander that has a tutor function, so it can search up the star of the show. My favorite example is my deck built around Norin the Wary, a one-drop that whose only job is to repeatedly trigger effects that trigger whenever a creature ETBs, because once during each player's turn, usually Norin enters. Kellen of the Fey-Blooded opens up very different options than a normal creature tutor commander. It itself is a 3-mana 2/2, double strike. Other creatures you control get +1/+0 for each aura and equipment attached to Kellen the Fey-Blooded. It does have an adventure stapled onto it. The adventure reads, search your library for an aura or equipment card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. So here you have a tutor from the command zone. We are going to do a double check. Sometimes you don't know all the rulings of all the mechanics. Adventure is not like a main mechanic, not an evergreen keyword. So let's read up on the rules, whether you can do this from the command zone as well. If an adventurer card ends up in exile, nope. What I'm looking for is something that tells me that adventuring or going on an adventure is only possible from hand. Sometimes that is the case, but it doesn't seem to be the case. So we can do this from the command zone. That's very nice. That means we kind of need to talk about two commanders here. We need to talk about this adventure and this creature. Let's start with the creature. It is a pretty straightforward like aura equipment commander. We've talked about equipments a bunch. Let's talk about some auras. Let's just try and find some good auras. The first thing I look for is an aura that creates tokens. That would be ideal. Stuff like Cartouche serves as a nice function. You create or you play an aura, which is just generally good for your commander, and then it creates a token that gets buffed by Kellen the Fey-Blooded. Quite obvious and simple, right? Let's look for an aura, for a very specific aura that I want to talk about because it is broken. Tempest Technique. I'm going to explain what it does in a second once we move back down. Cartouche of Solidarity, we explained. It is an aura that gives other creatures, or that triggers this effect. Other creatures you control get +1/+0 for each aura, blah, blah, blah. And it also comes with a token. Perfect. Tempest Technique, I just want to mention because it is a broken enchantment. It's a 4-mana effect that we've seen quite often. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each enchantment you control. The kicker here is it has Storm. Meaning you get to copy the spell for each other spell that was cast before this turn. If you just get 3 Tempest Techniques, all of them immediately at least give +3/+3. But of course, we're expecting something to be on Kellen already, so this just one-shots people out of nowhere. And that's quite nice. The other side of Kellen is its more adventurous side. Birthright Boon, where you search a library for an aura or equipment card. Yes, you can use it to like search up aura cards, but why don't you search up Sunforger? Sunforger is one of those cards that has its own tag on EDHREC. There are Sunforger decks for sure. 3 mana, equipped creature gets +4/+0. White-red, unattached Sunforger from the creature it's equipped to. Search your library for a red and white instant card with converted mana cost 4 or less, and cast that card without paying its mana cost. Then shuffle your library. Equip 3. The basic idea is that you always have access to your Sunforger, although at a higher rate, yes, of course, but this makes it so you pretty consistently can cast Sunforger on turn 3 if you so desire. That means suddenly from becoming a Sunforger deck that has Sunforger in the 99, you kind of have a 5 mana Sunforger in your command zone. At least the first time you're trying to resolve this. And then people will try to remove it, and you'll need to take precautions, of course. But I like the idea very much. Let's try and find a bit more, like one more card for the creature card, Kellen the Faeblooded. Maybe there's like a perfect card. Although I'm already quite happy. Yeah, see, Sunforger is a subcategory of Kellen decks, by the way. Like that's how much people love it. Let's look for auras. And see if there's an aura that creates a bunch of 1/1s, maybe. We can talk about the core spirit dances of the world. Core spirit dancer. Just as a good, like, payoff for having a bunch of aura spells, of course. Let's try and see if we find an aura that creates tokens. A lot of tokens. If possible. Vigilance, and at the beginning of your end step, create a 1/1 human creature token. We can talk about this one. But Elemental Mastery sounds way more fun. Elemental Mastery. 4 mana enchantment. Enchanted creature has tap, create X, 1/1 red elemental creature tokens with haste, where X is this creature's power. Exile them at the beginning of the next end step. Well, you only get to use them once, but Kellen will be huge because he has a bunch of auras on it. And then you create those elementals, and those elementals will also be huge because other creatures you control get +1/+0 for each aura and equipment attached to Kellen the Faeblooded. I think that just makes sense. I keep forgetting the stupid time tracker here. In the end, like, it doesn't matter. It's mostly a gimmick, but yeah, I'll try to get into the habit of doing it. The next card is super new. Let's add one. Let's move it. Because I like to move it. Give it the KI tag. And we have another copy of abilities. This time, though, triggered abilities. Tap 2 untapped creatures you control. Copy target triggered ability you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. And here, finally, we try to wiggle him into the Earther section, but it doesn't work here. So let's get rid of the ER tag. It doesn't work when it cares about activated abilities, but this one works perfectly fine. Triggered ability. So we can look for the word whenever, I guess. Whenever. We're gonna get a lot of results. That's fine. We're gonna give it a quick scan and see if we can identify like some card that you just know are quite good. That's the way I like to approach these more general searches, because yes, there is always niche cards that work surprisingly well, but for the purpose of the video, it's better to just stick to the more well-known cards. Let's see. I know this is quite good. Aki Battle Squad. 6 mana, 6/6. Whenever one or more modified creatures you control attack, untap all modified creatures you control. After this combat phase, there is an additional combat phase. This ability triggers only once each turn. While it only triggers once each turn, that does not prevent you from copying it. That means, while this card is technically balanced around only happening once each turn, the effect at least, only happening once each turn, this commander, the first year, we can definitely make use of. I didn't remember it immediately, but here you go. Top left is the new commander we talk about. Maybe we find one more good example, and then we're good to go. Although, like, extra combat is already enough to get people's minds going. We can talk about stuff like the Copper Dragon, but look at the price. What the frick is that? 63 euros? Okay, bro. But the Ancient Dragons are, again, one of those effects where people go like, oh wow, the commander can do that? I will have to start looking into it. If they then decide that the commander is still bad or too expensive, then so be it. We can again talk about ETB plus attack, because all of those are triggered abilities. I already have a card in mind that we have in the list. Yeah, okay. Let's see. There is a very expensive Evangel of Heliod. Killian, didn't we move on? Aren't we in a different section right now? KI. Yeah, no, there we go. KI. Oh, Kellen and Carol. Okay. So yeah, we have a bit of a different story here. For all of these cards. This effect gives Myriad and Haste, and it's very good to copy it. This effect is good. 6 mana, 1/3. When it enters, create X 1/1 soldiers, whereas X is the white mana symbols you have on your side of the board. This is nice because it also gives you 2 untapped creatures that you can then use to activate Curiel. Ancient Copper Dragon is just absurd, and so is Aki Battle Squad. Let's already switch to printing, because for the video... actually, is there a non-foil version? Yes, there is. Looks quite beautiful. It's a shame that it's so expensive. Maybe we'll get a reprint. What would be interesting is if we could find something that flickers a creature as an as a triggered ability. And I mean, actually, we know a million cards that flicker. Let's choose Restoration Angel. The trick here is Restoration Angel is a 4 mana 3/4 flash flying. When it enters, exile target non-angel creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. Curiel can obviously tap 2 untapped creatures you control. It could be Curiel itself, and it could be the Resto Angel that just entered the battlefield. You tap these 2 guys, and then you get to exile 2 cards and return them. One of those cards can be Curiel, let's say, And one of those cards can be the Evangel of Heliod. So you flicker Kirill, you flicker Evangel, Kirill comes back, and this clause, activate only once each turn, is immediately forgotten, right? It's a new entity, it's a new game piece, according to the rules, so you can activate this ability again. It would be nicer if we had a card that can flicker itself. Felidar. There was Felidar. Oof. Was it the Savior? No. There's a 4-mana Felidar, but I believe that was just a misprint that could flicker itself. Name. It immediately went infinite. Yeah. Yeah, this didn't say exile another target permanent, it just said exile a permanent you control. If you have 2 of those effects, don't you still go infinite? Oh god, it's gonna be complicated. Probably not. Let's think about it. But it is a bit of a combo player's dream here. Let's say you have a Carol out, you have a Felidar Guardian out. It's infinite ETBs at least, right? You play a Restoration Angel. Restoration Angel enters, puts its trigger on the stack. You tap Carol and Felidar Guardian to copy the Restoration Angel's ability. You exile Carol and Felidar Guardian. They both enter again. Felidar Guardian puts its ability on the stack, targeting Resto Angel, and you tap Carol and Felidar Guardian to copy the ability and also exile Carol. Then Resto and Carol enter. Resto targets Felidar Guardian, but Carol and Resto can tap themselves to copy the ability, and suddenly you have infinite ETBs. And then we can refer to Impact Tremors as a card that could be used as a payoff. Oh god, guys, I'm this close to building a new deck and buying it. Restoration Angel is a card that is so deeply ingrained into my Magic identity, because for the longest time before I knew what was good and had the money to buy it, I was flickering Sun Titans, blinged out Sun Titans with blinged out Restoration Angels in a blue-white control shell in Modern. Did I lose to every single Tron matchup? Yes. Did I lose to a lot of the Scapeshift matchups? Yes. Did I have fun while doing so? No, I was super salty as a kid. But in hindsight, Resto Angel plus Felidar Guardian going infinite with Carol. I just bought a new deck though. Okay, if it's enough to get me super duper excited, it's enough to get other people excited, I'm sure. Let's move on to Akira. Pardon me, Collidan Triumph Caster. Actually, it's not even the Akira pose, it's Chandra had the Akira pose. Let's add one. Let's move on to the main deck. And because I'm a good streamer and I remember, haha, let's move on to the next section. And the live split and the image gallery. KO is the tag. Collidan Triumph Caster. 2 mana, 2/3, human pilot. Mounts and vehicles you control have haste. Whenever a mount you control enters, it becomes saddled. Whenever a vehicle you control enters, it becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. As some people noted yesterday, yes, there is overlap between all of these commanders. We already talked about up here Astor that cares about vehicles. It also cares about equipments, but we talked about vehicles because there's other commanders that care about equipments. Like Bruenor. Here, this commander, yes, some overlap. yes, it might be best to play a lot of vehicles, but let's use the opportunity just, for the sake of the video, to talk about mounts. Mounts, relatively new. It's just strictly worse crew. Oh, wait, can I say, how do I denote that something has to be exactly something else? Can I say minus Oracle amount? Is that something we can do? Amount. Or minus mountain. Okay, here we have all the cards that care about mount. A new and still niche mechanic. Mount is printed atop of creatures. Unlike crew, you don't turn stuff into creatures. You just give them an additional bonus. An example. Wow, you need to scroll quite far down. Wait. Oh, sorry. Of course, like, the actual mechanic is not called mount. They are mounts, but the actual mechanic is called saddle. Of course, you saddle your mount. Let's just choose Calamity because I know what it does. 6 mana, 4/6 haste. Saddle 1. So in order to saddle it, you need to tap a creature with power 1 or greater, or multiple creatures that have that power combined. Whenever this attacks while saddled, you choose a non-legendary creature that saddled it, and then create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of the creature. And then you sacrifice the creature at the beginning of the next end step, but you get to do this twice because you repeat this process once. Fortune, Loyal Steed, another good mount to talk about. Actually, not that great. What our commander does is it gives the effect of saddle, but these saddle effects specifically care about the creatures that saddled them, and there won't be a creature that saddled them. I don't know. Take the Bulwark Ox. When it attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Sacrifice this. Creatures you control with counters on them gain hexproof and then destructible until end of turn. That's just very good. There's the whole pilot mechanic. Pilots are able to saddle mounts and crew vehicles better than other creatures. That's interesting. We can talk about this because you will have both vehicles and mounts in your deck. And my voice is gone super quickly today. Need to get like a nice gummy for this. 2 streams in a row, or the stream 2 days in a row is still a little tough for me. But we'll get through everything we wanted to discuss today. There he is. I think the more powerful thing is probably to play vehicles. But maybe we find something cool. Especially since there should be stuff that bridges the gap quite nicely. Let's see. Still not that great. But I mean, in the end, if that's what we find, that's what we find. Guardian Sunmare, 5 and a 5/5. When this creature attacks while settled, search your library for a non-land permanent card with mana value 3 or less. Put it onto battlefield, then shuffle. This might be as good as it gets. You immediately get this effect. You get to tutor, which is super powerful. You get to mana cheat, which is super powerful. This is the type of card that I would be looking for. At the beginning of combat on your turn, choose up to one target mount or vehicle you control. That permanent becomes saddled if it's a mount, becomes an artifact creature if it's a vehicle. This is the kind of card you need to look out for. My personal takeaway from this quick search would be it is not worth it right now to build about this to build around this commander. It will be worth it once we get another saddle or vehicle set. I mean, vehicles you can already kind of do. There's enough support for that. Mounts, not so much. But I mean, that's a takeaway. And in the end, like, who am I to tell people to do something or not to do something? I theory crafted a Brian Stout arm deck that flings creatures with 0 power. So, you know, to each their own. Commander is the place for wacky ideas. But I don't think I want to spend more time on this guy. He is, in the end, relatively straightforward, I would say. From futuristic cyberpunk onto cottagecore cuteness. Mabel, heir to Cragflame, is a 3-mana mouse soldier. Now, don't worry, this is not one of the mice that terrorized you in Best of One Standard. It is instead a pretty interesting, like little fellow that you can play in your command zone. It gives other mice you control +1/+1. Let's face it, even with Bloombarrow out, mice is not a creature type you can build around right now. At least it's very, very difficult. So this first line of text, not the greatest, but when it enters, you create Cragflame, a legendary colorless equipment artifact token with equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has vigilance, trample, and haste. Equip 2. Vigilance, trample, haste is kind of an insane assortment of keywords. In my opinion, there's like pairs of keywords that work super well together. The most obvious one is like First Strike, Death Touch. Or Trample, Death Touch. I'd argue that Vigilance, Haste, Trample is kind of the ultimate offensive keyword combination. Add lifelink to the mix and you're kind of invincible. Vigilance makes it so you can go on the offense and still block. Quite obvious. Trample makes it so you can almost not get jump blocked. Or you can't get jump blocked. And haste means if you have a threat from the command zone, it is very difficult to keep it in check. Usually a removal spell buys you another turn. But especially sorcery speed removal, like a board wipe, makes your commander more expensive, yes, but as long as you have the mana, you keep attacking every turn. And you get to keep attacking without the downside of having a tapped commander. So, this artifact equipment, kind of good. It's not good on Mabel herself. The way I would view this is the creature Mabel is maybe not even your commander. That's the way I would approach this. Mabel is what Kellen is to a Sunforger deck. Mabel is to a Cragflame. Yeah, that's just the name, Cragflame deck. +1/+1 Vigilance, Trample, and Haste. Oftentimes, decks that have a very strong two-side synergy package. I am thinking Spellslingers as spells, and then there is payoffs. in Spellslinger decks, there's often a third party that is enablers. Enablers spells payoffs. And you only get to do the most degenerate thing if you have all three. That's why or if we want to go different color, closer aligned to white-red, Aristocrats. Aristocrats is a very, very one-to-one comparison to this. Aristocrats needs the namesake cards, Aristocrats, that do something whenever a creature dies. They need sacrifice outlets that can sacrifice creatures, and they need creatures to be sacrificed. That is 3 pieces that you need to get your deck going, which oftentimes leads to non-games. You draw all of the payoffs and maybe all of the sacrifice outlets, but nothing to sacrifice. This in some combination. Equipment and equipment decks have a similar issue. You have your equipments, of course, and then you have some sort of enablers or payoffs. Enablers could be something like, let's say, SRAM. Let's put SRAM in here. SRAM, whenever you cast an aura, equipment, or vehicle spell, draw a card. Very classic example of an equipment payoff. It doesn't work particularly well with Mabel, but for my argument's sake. Then you have your equipments, like, first one that comes to mind is Command Plate. Oops. Command Plate. I'm sure I'll find it. Oh, it's already in here. Command. Okay, let's look for plate. And actually do the... Oh my god. Me and typing things. So, that is part 2. You have your equipment. And then technically, it's also good if you have cards like... what's a good payoff for equipments? Oh, I hate this artwork. Get it out of here. I don't want Iron Man. What's a good payoff for being equipped? I'm sure we have one down here. One of the commanders surely cares about being equipped. Yes, so let's take this as an example and add it to the main deck. Right. Add one to the main deck. So that is like the holy trifecta. Equipment, stuff that makes you draw, and stuff that gives you payoffs for equipment. You could argue that every equipment makes every creature a payoff, which is fair. But what Mabel does is she kind of takes one part of the equation onto herself. You don't need, technically, you don't need Command Plate. You will always have an equipment for stuff like Rayev. So what you can do in this case, for this commander specifically, that you can't do for, let's say, a Rayev, is play a bunch of this type of card. Whenever a creature you control that's enchanted or equipped attacks, you can play mostly this. Because you will never run into the problem of not having any equipment. That just shouldn't be the case. That makes Mabel super duper interesting to me. How do we look for cards like this? Enchanted. Probably the keyword equipped might be enough. We can see what I like to do is like, oh god, double P? English language is a hard language. For sure just 1P, right? Nope. Okay, equip creature, and then let's say minus type equipment. Because we care about creatures, we care about enchantments. Let's find a good example that resonates with people. I mean, it could be simple stuff. Stuff like Core Blade Master. Equip Boros you control have double strike. But it itself has double strike. Let's take Core Duelist. Core Duelist, as long as it is equipped, it has double strike. This is the type of card that I'm looking for. You always have an equipment. You will never run into a game where you don't have at least one equipment. That is the huge upside to having Mabel in your command zone. She is not good as a Voltron commander. She's just a 3/3. She's not good as an equipment payoff, right? She doesn't benefit from any other equipments played. She does provide an equipment. That is what she does quite uniquely. Yeah, stuff like this. Whenever an equipped creature you control dies, draw a card. That's nice because you'll always have an equipment. As long as it's your turn, equipped creatures you control are indestructible. I'm not saying that in a Mabel deck, you will not play a single other equipment. That's just nonsense. Of course you'll play a bunch of equipments. I'm just saying the ratio at which you need to play payoffs that benefit from equipments and equipments can be quite different to, let's say, a Rayef deck that says whenever a creature you control that's enchanted or equipped attacks, because you need to play, let's say, random number pulled out of my ass, 25% equipments in your deck to always have those equipments lying around. I had one card in my mind. It's a World Championship card that makes equipments cost less. I really want to talk about that. It's a knight. It costs 1 red mana. I'm sure I'll find it pretty quickly. Yeah, Fervent Champion. One of the championship cards. By Javier Dominguez. First strike haste. Whenever it attacks, another target knight gets +1/+0. We don't care. But equip abilities that target this guy cost less to activate. Insane card. Even in Commander. I'm a big proponent of like cutting 1-drops in Commander. It's a bit like Draft, where they just lose a lot of value very quickly. But this guy is such a huge mana cheat that mono whites just doesn't have access to. So yeah, I want to like make people aware of this card. Guess who forgot to move on? I won't this time. We're gonna talk about Mila. Already in the second half, I'm doing quite good on time. 1:20. I guess actually that's like exactly the same as yesterday. Here we have one of those examples of a flip commander that is a creature on one side and a planeswalker on the other side. So this is 2 commanders in one. Which makes it a bit difficult to tackle for a video. Usually what I do is I choose the side that I think has more potential. Let's read the front side first. 3 mana 2/3. Whenever an opponent attacks one or more planeswalkers you control, put a loyalty counter on each planeswalker you control. Whenever a permanent you control becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, you may draw a card. First glance, the way you build around this card is, well, you play a Super Friends deck. Let's get this one out of the way. Let's just say we choose one of the Gideons. Which one do I think is the best Gideon Planeswalker? No, I'm just going to choose the most nostalgic one. And then let's choose... Is that how you write Elspeth? I feel like there's a P in there. Elspeth. And I'm right. Let's just choose one Elspeth. These are just representatives. I'm not even going to look at the text box. These are just representatives for the idea of playing Mila, which still needs per tag as a Super Friends deck. The second line of text will do a lot of heavy lifting. I almost forgot it again. Here you go. Top left, Mila, which we're talking about right now. The second line of text, whenever a permanent you control becomes a target of a spell or ability, you draw a card. If it's from an opponent, this will do a lot of heavy lifting. But A, it's not interesting to talk about, and B, it's very difficult to deck build around. This is something that will happen naturally in every game, and you can plan for it in some ways, but yeah, it's not particularly creativity inducing. And the first line of text is very obviously just play a lot of Super Friends and benefit off of playing Super Friends. Let's look at the Planeswalker side. Luca Wayward Bonder is a 6-mana 5 loyalty Planeswalker. +1, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. If a creature card was discarded this way, draw 2 cards instead. -2, return target card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste, exile it at the beginning of your next end step. -7, you get an emblem with, whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. Okay. Let's get the obvious comparison out of the way. Sneak Attack. Let's also talk about Meek Attack, a card that I own and definitely want to play at some point. Let's go for the normal art. I think it's cute, but I don't like it all that much. I guess we can go for the list. Yes. The -2 Luca, which I imagine will be the ability you activate the most the first turn it comes down, is Sneak Attack and Meek Attack, which can both put creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. What I find super interesting, now that I think about it, is, of course, Meek Attack, or let's get Meek Attack out of here actually. Sneak Attack and Luca want the exact same profile of cards. They want the Blightsteel Colossuses of the world. Blightsteel Colossus, 11/11 trample, infect, indestructible. Let's use an actual magic printing. To just one-shot, right? You sneak attack into a Blightsteel Colossus, you kill someone. That is the story of thousands of cube games every month. Luca wants to do the same thing. I mean, it doesn't work with Blightsteel specifically, so maybe I should choose a different target. I should for video's sake, because then you need to explain that Blightsteel shuffles itself back. What else is there? Is there a Titan triplet? Was that one of the things? Triplicate Titan? Let's say we choose this one. No, also not great. Okay. What other creature is there? Again, we could use a nice ETB. Or a nice attack trigger. Okay. Because right now I can't think of anything better, let's choose Ulamog the Defy. Oh, sorry. Actually, I want Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger. Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger. Oh no, it also shuffles itself back, right? The Ceaseless Hunger? No, it doesn't. Okay. All of this just to fall back onto Ulamog. Well, what does Ulamog do? When it enters, if you cast it, you exile 2 permanents. You're not going to do that all that often. It is indestructible, 10/10. Whenever it attacks, target player exiles the top 20 cards of his or her library. Maybe not the perfect card for Luca, but that's the one that I could think of right now. Very good sneak attack target if you want to exile 20 cards from someone's library. Then Ulamog sacrifices itself because of sneak attack. Sneak attack says at the end of turn, sacrifice the creature you sneak attacked into. Play. Ulamog is in your graveyard, and then the turn after, you can play Luca. And Luca returns target card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste, and then you exile it at the beginning of your next end step. So the way I would think about Luca is as like a second sneak attack, as an aftermath sneak attack, if you want to be super magic nerdy about it. There is a couple of effects like sneak attack by now. Let's see what the updated rules text is so we can... You may put creature card. Let's search for you may put creature. You may put creature. I'm sure it says creature card, right? Because creatures are not creatures. They're creature cards on every zone other than the battlefield. And then let's say... does it say play or battlefield? Probably battlefield. Okay. Let's try and find some good examples. Whenever a creature you control attacks, or a creature enters the battlefield under your control attacking, you may pay 2. So this... If you do, you may put a creature card with mana value less than that creature's mana value from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. Arnie Metalbrow is a commander that for sure goes in a Luca deck. This is kind of like cascading creatures from your hand onto the battlefield. The way I envision this is you have sneak attack out. You sneak attack in a huge 10 mana creature. Arnie is on the field, so whenever that 10 mana creature attacks that you snuck attack, you snuck attacked into play, you pay an additional 2, you get another creature permanently from your hand into the battlefield tapped and attacking. Then the sneak attack creature dies, and then... Ooh, by the way, do I have Luca in here somewhere? The image of Luca. Let me double check if I can add the backside of Luca to the top left. Let's see. I can fix this. Let's see. Give me a second. Okay. Well, the directory isn't updated. I would need to like remove the top left and add it again on stream. I'm sure you guys can remember. But I'm looking for more sneak attack effects. I know there's a red commander that does kind of the same. Ilhark. Let's add a bunch of these cards to the field. Let's get Meek Attack back in. We love Meek Attack. It's so cute. Perforos goes in here. All right, that's good enough. Or Through the Breach. Through the Breach is kind of a classic example again. And we don't need to talk through all of these. Okay, let's reiterate. What makes this commander interesting? What makes Luca Wayward Wander interesting is its -2 returns a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste, and you exile it at the beginning of your end step. We have seen a million effects like Sneak Attack, like Through the Breach, like Meek Attack, like Perforos, that puts a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield, and then the creature gets sacrificed at the end of turn. Luca can then the following turn return a creature again, and make use of something like Ulamog again. So it's like the after effects of a sneak attack. And that's quite interesting, honestly. We then paired this with Arnie Metalbrow and Ilhark. So whenever a creature attacks, or a creature enters attacking, you may pay 2. If you do, you may put a creature card with mana value less than that creature's mana value onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. So if you attack with Ulamog, pay 2 extra, you can put a creature with mana value 9 or less onto the battlefield. And then Ilhark, 5 mana 6/6 trample. When it attacks, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking But you have to return a creature card to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. I think that's a pretty solid idea. What I would like to do is find a better creature than Ulamog for this effect. So let's look at Mila. This is something that you can like manually do. Or you just go on EDA check. Although people seem to be doing a bit of different stuff. Most of them seem to be focusing. Can I search for Luca Wayward Bonder? No, I cannot. People seem to be focusing on Mila way more than they do on Luca. What do we want here? Good sneak attack stuff. Aurelia is pretty nice. Whenever it attacks for the first time each turn, untap all creatures you control. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. Why not? Why not? Let's add it. And get Ulamog out of there. There's a bunch of good stuff you can sneak attack, of course. You only need to be mindful that the creature needs to go into the graveyard, which a lot of good sneak attack targets don't. Like all of the Eldrazi, or most of the good Eldrazi shuffle themselves back into your library. Nahiri, Forged, and Fury. Now, it says Nahiri, it says Forged. I'm expecting equipment, although I don't remember 100% what it does. So, let's move on to the main deck and see what this card is all about. Nahiri, 6 mana. She has affinity for equipment. Whenever an equipped creature you control attacks, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. You may cast equipment spells this turn without paying the mana cost. So immediately we see a want for a bunch of equipments, which we have seen another commander that has the same desire, which was Brennor. At least that's the way we built him. So a card like Bludgeon Brawl, which turns every non-creature, non-equipment artifact into an equipment, is insane here. It also wants a bunch of creatures that are equipped, which means we need to find like a mixture of go wide and equipment. We've seen this a bit. I'm wondering if we have cards in here that kind of fall under the same category. I don't remember. What comes to mind when we think go wide equipment strategies? Might need to take a look at EDH first. I mean, what we can talk about, of course, is I love affinity for equipment because it means you can always cheat on command text. The way this interacts is if you have to pay 2 more to play Nahiri, so technically 6 generic. If you have 6 equipments, Nahiri still only costs 2 mana. What I also love is this. This is a bunch of card advantage. One thing I remember just now is you want a lot of density of equipments, because equipments you get to cast for free, right? Off of her trigger. There is cards that have this 4 Mirrodin, let's call it keyword, where the equipment comes with a creature. So, let's take a look at the Dragonwing Glider, a card that I lost to Unlimited. 5 mana, 4 Mirrodin. When this equipment enters, create a 2/2 red rebel creature token, then attach this to it. Equipped creature gets +2/+2, flying, and haste. Maybe Hexblade Wallbreaker is better. 5 mana for Mirrodin, so it comes attached to a 2/2. Equipped creature gets +2/+2. Whenever equipped creature attacks, if it's a first combat, untap each attacking creature. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. Let's put both of these in the deck. We're obviously going to talk about these. Then, let's talk about Living Weapon, which is kind of a variant of this. Instead of attached to a 2/2 Rebel, these come into play attached to a 0/0 Black Germ. But the principle is the same. It is a creature and an equipment. Nahiri wants both. And should you exile this card from the top of your library, you get to cast it for free. So you get to cast a creature for free and an equipment for free. I think that separates Nahiri from other commanders quite distinctively, even though a lot of other commanders, of course, care about equipments. Whenever an equipped creature you control attacks, exile the top card of your library. Whenever I read exile top card of your library, I am, of course, thinking of Sensei's Divining Top. Everybody's favorite 1-mana artifact that definitely doesn't make people's turns 20% longer every time it's played. And Scroll Rack, which kind of does the same thing. I mean, it doesn't do the same thing, but Sensei's Divining Top lets you order the top 3 cards of your library. Scroll Rack, 1 tap, exile any number of cards from your hand face down. Put that many cards from your top of the library into your hand, and then put the cards that were previously in your hand on top of your library in any random order. Sorry, in any order. Which of course means, should you have a Batter Skull stuck in your hand, you activate Scroll Rack, you put it at the very top of your library and exile it to Nahiri's ability. What we can also talk about is equipments that equip themselves to a creature when they enter. Let's see, card type, equipment, and then attach, enters. Maybe we'll find something like this. I remember a 3-mana artifact that does this, but there's probably a million that do this by now. Let's find the example that I'm thinking of because, well, let's just pick the Hammer of Nazan. Or, sorry, the Piku Piku Hammer, of course. The fuck is that Piku Piku Hammer? What I'm thinking of is Nahiri's ability triggers when you attack. It doesn't trigger on damage. If you hit a card like Hammer of Nazan, or if Hammer is in play, any other equipment, those equipments will attach themselves to attacking creatures. Let's say you attack with your Dragon Glider token. A 4/4 flying haste token. It attacks. The top card you hit is Hammer of Nazan. Whenever Hammer or another equipment enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach that equipment to target creature you control. And then equipped creature gets +2/+0 and indestructible. Before blocks happen, so also before damage, you get to surprise attach a few equipments. So Cigar does aid, of course. An effect like this. Whenever an equipment enters the battlefield under your control, attach it to target creature you control. Stuff like this is probably a must in a Nahiri Forged Fury deck. They're good in every equipment deck, but here they play a very specific role in like these surprise hits. You attack with a couple of creatures, you get a couple of equipments for free, suddenly someone dies. I will never get used to this. I keep missing the Actually, before I move on to the next commander, I'm already going to move the image gallery. Add one. Let's move on to the main deck. To move on to Nayali or Najali, Sun's Vanguard. She seems to already be in here. Let's give her her own unique tag of NE. Hashtag NE. All right. Attacking tokens you control have double strike. Whenever one or more tokens you control attack a player, exile the top card of your library. During any turn you attack with a token, you may play that card. Second line of text is nice card advantage. Card advantage, always, in my opinion, boring to build around, great to play with. But since this is a video about deck building, not about playing, not about realistic expectations, let's focus on the first line of text. Attacking tokens you control have double strike. Of course, a 1/1 soldier token with double strike, not exciting. But thankfully, we have seen a million ways to get high value tokens, right? Ortheon being like the example that is constantly brought up, or stuff like a commander that we've built around Hoffrey Ghostforge, or that we've already like mentioned, which exiles dying creatures you control to create a spirit. Oh wait, this is not actually a token. Non-token. Okay, Staff of the Storyteller, you're out, but apart from that, we're fine. Yeah, so... No, it is a token, whatever. I'm so dumb. Staff of the Storyteller, you're back in. It's like a Simpsons sketch. So yeah, Hoffrey creates ghost spirit tokens, which means those are the ways to get high value tokens. Because certainly a legendary or like whatever, a good creature, let's say a Sun Titan token with double strike is way more scary than a 1/1 soldier token or a 1/1 flying spirit token that has double strike. Is there tokens that benefit off of hitting someone? I'm thinking... God. Let's say token deal damage. Let's look for that phrase. Because double strike means we get 2 hits on something, which could be interesting. I don't think there's much there. But we'll see. We'll see. Minus is UB to get rid of a few cards. Obviously, here's a couple of cards that create tokens, like Copper Dragon. I'm not sure how to filter those out. But we can talk about Copper Dragon. It kind of, if you go through the hoops of creating token copies of existing creatures you control, Ancient Copper Dragon is nice because an Ancient Copper Dragon with double strike deals combat damage to a player twice, so you get to roll 2d20. As simple as that. Though, what I want is the Bottle of Suleiman. No. What I want is something that creates good tokens that maybe have a triggered ability. I was thinking of Kiki Jiki's, like the Kiki Jiki Saga, but I think that is on attack and not on damage. Damage player. I don't think we'll find something in here. Token deal damage. I think we'll need to switch the approach here. The way you search for this is a bit too generic. So the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to start with EDA track to get an idea of the keywords that I should be looking for. What I see here is that people don't dream too big. They just create tokens, which is fine. I mean, intangible virtue is just a good mention in general. Intangible virtue. It gives for 2 mana all of your tokens +1/+1 and vigilance. Of course, like vigilance plus double strike is already like half a one game. I'm looking for stuff that that creates tokens that have good payoffs, or stuff that gives you a bunch of good tokens. Idol of Oblivion is a card that I haven't mentioned, although I maybe should have. It's one of the best card draw engines for token decks. If you don't know, 2 mana, tap, draw a card, activate only if you've created a token this turn. In general, I believe this should be possible for most decks to enable and have up every single turn. And that 2 mana artifact that draws 1 card a turn is just insane. Genuinely insane. Right? If you have Loyal Apprentice, stuff like that, you'll have your 1/1 token every single turn. Maybe I get to talk about Prava of the Steel Legion. I find this card to be really good. As long as it's your turn, creature tokens you control get +1/+4. Maybe there's something more specific that you can do with it. In the case of Nejali, that gives all of your tokens double strike. The 4 extra toughness is really nice because it will ensure, even against first strike creatures, you should get the second damage phase most of the time. I'm going to put it in just as a token payoff. Prava of the Steel Legion. I'm sure there's only one card like this, exactly. And then, yeah, people don't seem to dream as big as me. They just play actual token makers. Dragon Master Outcast is noticeable. Because it creates huge tokens. Like, you don't need to go through the hoops of copying a good creature you control. This just makes a good token. 5/5 dragon is as good as you could possibly want. And of course, now that I think of it, one card that you would for sure play is Divine Visitation. If one or more tokens would enter under your control, create that many 4/4 angels instead, with flying and vigilance. Yeah, like, of course. So that is kind of a separate route, I would say. Either you focus on creating tokens of actual creatures, or you just go the normal token route of Intangible Virtue, Dragon Master Outcast, Divine Visitation, stuff like that. We have 2 more cards ahead of us, but one of them again is like a 2-for-1. And it's good. I think I'm gonna end in time today. My voice is quite strained. And then next time, I can already see one of my 2 of my favorite ones, my favorite commanders on this list. I look forward to Ragos Deft Gastronaut so much. Look at this artwork. This guy is like the funniest commander in red-white. And then I've already built a deck about Tai, Joaquin, Perfect Shot. She's like she to me embodies the fantasy of a sniper in shooters, like the Widowmakers or op players in my case in CSGO, where you one-shot stuff and get rewarded for it. So that's pretty cool. Let's stick to our guns though and move on to the next one, Osgear, the Reconstructor. Let's add one actually. First things first. Let's add the image top left. And then move one to the main deck. Osgear, Giant Artificer, Vigilance, 1 mana, sacrifice an artifact, target creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn. And his second line of text, X tap Exile an artifact card with mana value X from your graveyard. Create 2 tokens that are copies of the exiled card. Activate only as a sorcery. Oh no, I need to pay to get my artifact back. Whatever will I do? Well, you are going to play Lotus Bloom. This guy costs 0 mana, and it's a Black Lotus, but it has to spend 3. Osgir, like so many commanders of this profile, where you pay X to get mana value X out of your hand, out of your graveyard, out of whatever zone, is best paired with 0 mana stuff. If we go back to the Golgari commanders, I believe you should be able to see them now. We had a different but similar commander in, let's sort by type and tags, in Glissa the Traitor. Glissa, whenever a creature an opponent controls is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. And as you can see, like, we were thinking of the Mishra's Baubles, the Lotus Petals, and all of these cards are still very, very good in a deck of our profile. The huge difference is showcased in a card like Lotus Bloom. Glissa gets them back into your hand, and you could then suspend Lotus Bloom, which is okay, but not that great. Osgir has the upside of immediately putting this card into play, and you don't need to wait for the suspend cost. It doesn't have a mana cost, but that doesn't mean that, like, you can't get it back with Osgir. So that's a huge difference. Apart from that, Mishra's Bauble continues to be like just a broken magic card. 0 mana to draw a card and look at the top card of target player's library. With Osgir, just tap it, and you get 2 copies off of it, so 2 more draw spells. Of course, this is Commander. We can't build like a tight package of Osgir, Mishras, Lotus Blooms. We need to play more artifacts, and that means we also need to think bigger and to think outside of the 0 mana bubble, or bauble, I guess. Haha, funny joke. We need to think of value artifacts that sacrifice themselves. We could include a Wayfarer's Bauble, although it's not particularly exciting. Wayfarer's Bauble. 1 mana artifact for 2 mana and tap. You sacrifice it, you get a basic land into play tapped. And then with Osgir, you can get 2 copies of it. Also great, potentially stuff like Icar Wellspring. Super simple, same as Wayfarer's Bauble, not exciting, but super good. 2 mana artifact when it enters, and when it is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card. You play this on 2, you play Osgir on, you play Osgir on 4. Next turn you can sacrifice this, draw the second card off of Icar Wellspring, then pay 2, tap Osgir, get Icar Wellspring back, you draw a card, then you sacrifice one of the 2 Icar Wellspring, actually you draw 2 cards of course, and you sacrifice 1 copy of Icar Wellspring again, and you've already drawn, what, 5 cards with just Icar Wellspring and Osgir. I think that's pretty sick. What else is there that we can do? Let's look for more artifacts that sacrifice themselves. So, card type, artifacts. And Oracle text, sacrifice. And of course, okay. We could play creatures. that have modula. That's interesting. So creatures that have modula, in Arcbound Ravager's case, sacrifice an artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on Arcbound Ravager. Modula 1, this creature enters with a +1/+1 counter on it. When it dies, you may put all of its +1/+1 counters on target artifact creature. This could be nice because you want modular creatures to go to the graveyard, at least to a certain extent. And then you can get 2 copies of Arcbound Ravagers back. It's very nice. Is there maybe... I mean, there's the Soul Ring that we can talk about. The Suspend Soul Ring. It's very similar to Lotus Bloom, but, you know, it's always nice if you can mention 2 cards that do the same to give the viewer the impression that there is more to this than just this one single pet card. Excuse me. Yeah, I mean, stuff like Chromatic Lantern, but it all falls into the same category. We don't need to, like, harp down on this a million times. I'm thinking of stuff that goes big. We could talk about Mindslaver again, where you can get more copies of Mindslaver. Is there an artifact that takes extra turns? Yes, we saw one, right? Extra turn. But does it exile itself? Extra? Oh. So no sacrifice. That probably means those cards exile themselves for safety reasons. So exile Gonti's Heart, take an extra turn, and remove 3 charge counters, get an extra turn after this one, but it doesn't even sacrifice. Okay. Not what I wanted. But as a representative of like a big haymaker, we can talk about Mindslaver again. Mindslaver, put it into the OS category. And then, to go over it again, the huge upside here is you have a free sacrifice outlet for artifacts. That is great with cards like Icar Wellspring that have a die trigger. It is also quite nice with modular cards like Arcbound Ravager, as they, at least to a certain extent, want to go to the graveyard because of the modular ability. It is very nice that you can get extra copies of a card from your graveyard. That means Icar Wellspring gets even better because you get 2 of them after you sacrificed it at the same time. You can get back big haymakers like Mindslaver to control more people, potentially. You can get back tiny value artifacts like Wayfarer's Bauble, which act in a similar but slightly less slightly less perfect way with Osgir. Or you could go the cheap route, quite literally, and get back Mishra's Bauble and Lotus Bloom. And we're also gonna find the weird Soul Ring that has mana value 0. Mana value 0. Soul Talisman. Which you could discard. Maybe we talk about Faceless Looting as a discard spell. But I think everybody's gonna make the jump. The mental jump to stuff like self-discard. Base idea of this deck is, let's say turn 1, you play Faithless Looting, you discard a Lotus Bloom and a Mindslaver into your graveyard. Turn 2, you play Icar Wellspring to draw a card. Turn 3, land, do whatever. Turn 4, you play Osgir. The turn after, you exile, you sacrifice Icar Wellspring for 1 mana, you get back Lotus Bloom, you get 2 copies of Lotus Bloom, and then the turn after you can cast Mindslaver or whatever. I think it's pretty easy to see how this guy could be an interesting build around commander. I don't think we need to go much deeper than that. No. Yeah, I'm happy with this selection. The card that I want to like see the least is Arcbound Ravager, but it is a free sacrifice outlet to get stuff into your graveyard, which is not to be underestimated. Even if your commander already has a sacrifice outlet built in. Let's see. Today we talked about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 commanders, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 left. So let's do Plarg yet before we stop as the last commander today. Let's move one to the main deck. Plarg. I say let's do one more, but it's really 2 commanders. 2 mana, 2/2. Discard a card and draw a card on tap. 5 mana and tap. Reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a non-legendary, non-land card with mana value 3 or less. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Put all revealed cards not cast this way on the bottom of your library in a random order. So, we have loot, so let's talk about madness. Which card comes to mind? One of the Emrakuls, and I forget which one. Emrakul, The World Anew, I believe it is. Yes. TL is your new tag. Haha, I thought of it. I swapped the image. You have a discard outlet in your command zone. Think of including madness cards. It doesn't need to be Emrakul. Emrakul is quite hard to cast. It stands as a representative. I'm not going to delve deeper into madness. Madness is a mechanic that I've looked at a bunch, like literally dozens of times. Right now, I think there's just not enough support. Unless your commander gives something madness. But that's a very different story. 5 mana tap, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a non-legendary, non-land card with mana value 3 or less. Usually, the way I abuse an effect like this is I read, you may cast cards without paying their mana cost to cast cards like Lotus Bloom. This mechanic is a little like Cascade, where Cascade makes you also exile cards from the top of your library until you hit something that costs X or less. And the way you build around it is you play a bunch of cards that are split cards, right? So let's look at is split, just to give my first idea a rundown. You play Boom Bust, or sorry, Dead Gone. Your deck is full of cards like Dead Gone. You activate this ability and you scroll past, like you go past Dead Gone because Dead Gone in your library is counted as 4 CMC until you find your Lotus Blooms. That is one way to build the deck. We are going to look at some more cards here. Let's look for Suspend and mana value 0. Just to give an example. Right, you could be playing a balanced deck. Each player chooses a number of lands they control equal to the number of lands to play with the least lands controls, sacrifice the rest, does the same for creatures and hands. You could be playing a Glimpse of Tomorrow deck. Those cards are completely different. Completely different. The decks you built are like night and day in difference. Resurgent Belief. All of these, you could be playing all of these cards. Let's actually get rid of the Lotus Bloom later. Oh, shit. I should include this though. Interesting that there's Soul Talisman and Mox Tantalite. I have certainly built decks like this. One of the complaints that is very obvious to make, that is super fair and relevant also, is this is Commander. We are playing a singleton format. And what you do is the one card that appears every game, your Commander, is there to target one card in your deck that will also appear every single game. And your deck is built around then 2 cards that appear every single game. That's not really singleton, or at least not the spirit of singleton. That doesn't mean this is not a fair, like, that you shouldn't, couldn't, wouldn't build a deck like this. It is, in my opinion, though, more of a deck building challenge. You could just be playing this the fair way. And the fair way being you're playing a bunch of madness cards and you're playing a bunch of cheap to the ground, low to the ground cards. I mean, this is red. If you don't manage to build a deck with only 3 or lower CMC, non-legendary, non-land cards, then I don't know what you're doing. What I find more interesting, though, is the other side to Plarg, Dean of Chaos, which is Augusta, Dean of Order. She is a 3-mana 1/3 human cleric. Other tapped creatures you control get +1/+0. Other untapped creatures you control get +0/+1. Whenever you attack, untap each creature you control, and then tap any number of creatures you control. Whenever I read an effect like this, I think of Magda, my dear Magda. Magda is a 2-drop. Whenever a dwarf you control becomes tapped, create a treasure token. What Augusta does could be described by some as pseudo-vigilance. Your creature's attacked, they're tapped, but Augusta untaps them. And then why would you tap them ever again? Well, because of cards like Magda. You could attack with all of your dwarves. They become tapped because you're attacking. And then Augusta untaps all of your dwarves again. And then you get to choose to tap all of your dwarves again. Though that means you get 2 treasures for all of your dwarves. That's kind of insane. There's more cards like this. We can look at becomes tapped. Becomes tapped. So, especially now with Lorwyn, the merfolk care about this, but unfortunately merfolk are blue, although there is some white ones as well. For example, you could pair this up with Depala Pilot Exemplar to look for dwarfs and vehicle cards. Sure. I'm gonna add one. I know one is already in the deck, but let's do it just in case. Whenever this enters with 3-1/-1 counter on it, whenever it becomes tapped, remove a -1/-1 counter on it. Like, easy to see. This is not a powerful card. This is not good enough to be included in your commander deck. I'm sorry, a 2-mana 5/4 is just not good enough. But it embodies the idea. This is there. There could be good cards in here, but I'm looking for the cards that I know, because those other people might also know. So for example, as long as whenever this becomes tapped, exile the top 6 cards of your library. You may cast a vehicle or artifact creature spell from among them. Put the rest of the cards on the bottom of your library in a random order. Let's see. Do we find one more good example? Here you create tokens. We can use this. Token maker, a 1/2 token maker, I much prefer to a 6/5 or whatever, or a 5/4, whatever that guy was. Yeah, the Morphog are okay, but Nothing to write home about. Yeah, why not? Like Wildfire Awakener. When it enters, create X1/1 red elemental creature tokens. With whenever this creature becomes tapped, it deals 1 damage to target player. You get to double that up. That's pretty nasty. Of course, this card would also require you to play a very specific type of deck. But I mean, so be it, right? It's a good payoff, not to be underestimated. And if people go that route, then let's not try to yuck their yum. Let's add all of these. One of these was not great like the others. Like a 5/4 is just not good enough. But we can talk about it as like, yeah, Law and Merfolk here, OG Merfolk here, a new card. So might make sense for the video. And then let's add a card that's let's look for the phrase as long as tapped. Because there is a bunch of cards that reads, hey, as long as it's tapped, for example, the Archangel of Tithes. We'll see if there's another one. There's a lot of these old templating that read like do something for as long as this remains tapped, and that kind of messes with this. Okay. No, we're gonna choose the Archangel as a good example of like actually it doesn't work all that well. So the way this would work, if you were to attack with Archangel with your commander out, with the Order of Dean out, you attack, and as long as it is attacking, as long as it's attacking creatures you can't block unless their controller pays 1 for each of those creatures. Even if you untap it, it's still going to be attacking. But as long as it is untapped, creatures can't attack you or planeswalkers you control unless their controller pays 1 for each thing. Let's look for untapped. There might be a bunch more. Like Pristine Angel is like not a good card, but it drives the point home. Nope, that's it. Let's look for the Archangel in here. Archangel. The other Archangel, I guess. Yeah, the basic idea is you have the Order of Dean out. Right? You go attacking with a bunch of creatures that have, whenever this becomes tapped, triggers, and you untap them and tap them again. Or you have a card like Archangel of Tithes. It is attacking, so it costs 1 to block your creatures, but you then untap it, which means it also costs 1 to attack you or a planeswalker you control. That's a base idea. And I am looking for the phrase tapped creatures as like a last act. Tapped creatures. You control. And there's one card in particular that I am looking for. Let's see. I mean, stuff like this is pretty bad. Untap creatures you control get +2, +0/+2. But that's an interesting card. Cryptic Gateway, interesting. You tap 2 untap creatures you control. You may put a creature card from your hand that shares a creature type with each creature tapped this way onto the battlefield. If you build more of a tribal deck, then maybe you can flash in a lord to surprise kill someone. That's pretty cool. Mm. Let's go quite deep on this since it's the last thing we do today. Um, I mean, tap 2 untap creatures you control. You could play this guy. Funnily enough, I was looking for Masako. Let's scroll past her real quick and then read what she does once we're done. Because she's my favorite card in mono white for sure, and I'm getting closer and closer. This research helps me a lot to find cards that that could turn her into an actual deck. Mm. Tap 2 untapped creatures. All of this is nice and all. At first I thought there was something there, but there's not. Let's see. Exactly. Nice to see you join. Unfortunately, this is the tail end of the stream, but Masako for sure my favorite green mono white card. Mm, okay. Okay, we didn't find anything super sick with this search, but as I said, my final act is going to be talking about my favorite card. To reiterate, for the backside of this commander, so not a Plarg Dean of Chaos, but instead Augusta Dean of Order. 3 mana, 1/3. Tap creatures get +1/+0. Other untapped creatures get +0/+1. Whenever you attack, untap each creature you control, then tap any number of creatures you control. A way to build this is to include cards like Magda that care about becoming tapped. This makes use of Augusta's ability in more ways than just pseudo vigilance, because you could just untap all of your creatures and leave it at that, but you could also gain an extra tap trigger. Augusta's ability also really good with Archangel of Tithes. As long as it's attacking, blocking costs 1. Even if you untap it, it's still going to be an attacking creature, so blocking is gonna cost 1. But then you can untap it to have other people pay 1 to attack you for each creature they want to attack you with. Here it does the same job as vigilance. And then another way you could abuse this mechanic is you could be playing stuff like Cryptic Gateway, 5 mana, tap 2 untapped creatures you control. You may put a creature card from your hand that shares a creature type with each creature tapped this way onto the battlefield. Again, this acts as if Augusta's ability was vigilance, but that's still like not too shabby. You could use this to flash in a lord and surprise kill someone. Or, and now for the final card of the stream, Masako the Humulus doesn't make use of Augusta's ability. Or let's put it differently. Let's read Masako first. 3 mana, 2/1. You can play her as if she had flash, or she just has flashes as the new templating would be. And tap creatures you control may block as though they were untapped. This is kind of like the extra cherry on top. If you have your Augustas and your Magdas on board, let's say you have Augusta, and let's take the Stony Brook Schoolmaster. You attack with your Stony Brook Schoolmaster, it becomes tapped. You create a 1/1 blue merfolk. Whenever you attack, untap each creature you control. This becomes untapped, and then tap any number of creatures you control. You tap it again. So you've gotten 2 1/1 merfolks into play. And then if you also have Masako, even though this creature was tapped, you can still block. Masako, I wish she was good in a command zone, but the jig is up immediately if you play her in a command zone. It doesn't mean she's useless, but in a 99 is probably where she really shines, and I hope some people include her in their Dean Augusta Dean of Order deck. At some point, I might get to building a deck like this. At some point, I also want to, like, once I'm big enough, I want to get into the Magic Online creator program thingy. And then we can, like, test some of these ideas on stream. Which would be super duper fun. It would also be a nice way to get some engagement with the community outside of just, card suggestions. Just having like one stream a week where we play Commander, right? Gather together. It's in the name, after all. Magic the Gathering. For now, this does it. We have exactly 12 commanders for tomorrow, right? 3, 6, 9, 12, which is the exact number we had today. Although today we had Mila / Luca and Plarg / Augusta, which is kind of 2 commanders each. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed today's stream, even if you just caught the tail end of it. And always remember, be kind to yourself and others. Goodbye.